Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for today's London Java Community event. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Abby and I work with Barry Cranford, who's the founder of the LJC, and I have the privilege of hosting today's event. For those of you who don't know, the LJC is just one of 15 or 17 now, I think, actually, communities that's run by RecWorks. They're all completely free and accessible for any of you. RecWorks are a tech recruitment company with a massive difference. So as a company, we believe that recruitment really can be a force for good in the industry beyond just placing people in jobs. We have a particular focus on learning, mentoring, and personal development. If people want to learn and others want to teach or share their knowledge, we are happy to connect you through our communities and events. We see this as giving back to those we've worked with in the past, but also paying it forward to those we hope to work with in the future. To date, we've run over 700 different events for engineers, developers, students, graduates, and CTOs. We have run conferences, lightning talks, hackathons, mingles, all sorts. In January of this year, we made our 4,000th introduction through our Meet a Mentor program. That is another one of our free communities. We're really excited to see where that's going to go next. As I've already said, we love to give opportunities for people to connect, and this event is part of that. If you'd like to know more about any of our other communities, please do get in touch with myself or Barry or Helen Lewis if you know her, and we can take it from there. The recording of today's session will be available on YouTube. I will put the link to the channel in the chat later, or you can message me. I'll put my details in the chat later as well for you to get the video when it's available. If you have any questions, you can feel free to put them in the chat as we go through, and I will be monitoring that and hopefully asking at appropriate moments. You're also welcome, if you've got a question, just do the raise your hand, and obviously at a moment Sven can pause and you can unmute and ask yourself. That's absolutely fine too. With no further ado, I'm going to hand over to Sven, and we're really excited to hear from you. Thank you.
Thanks, Abby. And thanks everyone for joining. I hope you have a bit cooler place than I have. Super hot, and I'm not prepared for that. Although I live in the north, like at the Baltic Sea, northern Germany. Usually it's really chilly here, but today it's not. I wish I had a kind of air conditioner or something like that. Anyway, I found a dark corner in my house. So let me share my screen. And again, just what Abby just said, like, you know, the crowd is not too big. So while I go through the presentation and also the demo part, feel free to interrupt me at any point, ask questions. We can make this quite interactive and lively. Alrighty. So we've tested that. So I assume you all see my screen now. And let me play. So I'm gonna talk about ephemeral developer environments as code. Let me first kind of dive into the problem this is going to solve. You all know, like, I assume you're all developers, have experience with development. And you all have gone through this pain, maybe even today or last week or so. The thing is, you just want to start coding on something. You have an idea, you have an intent, and then there's so much stuff in between you and that really kind of, you know, joyful, creative moment of coding or debugging something. What's in between is, depending on where you are, like, you know, if you're starting first time on the project, then of course you have to do all the setup, right? You don't need to do the git clone, install all the tools and requirements. That it's not only, you know, the IDEs and so on, but also servers or databases you might use, caches and so on, maybe Docker, if it still runs on your Mac. If not, you need to find other solutions. You need to configure your local machine so it runs properly. And then you have the raw source code, and of course you need to run the build, Maven, install, Gradle, whatever you have, download all the libraries, compile the code, run code generators. And then finally, if you are lucky, you are in a state where you can code, right? And in larger corporations, because software systems become more complex, distributed systems and the like, Kubernetes, this thing is not something you do in 1 or 2 hours. But I have been working as a consultant for a few years, and sometimes it took me almost a week in order to get started with this stuff. This is already, this is kind of currently a pure onboarding problem I'm looking at, but actually the real problem is in that we need to do this continuously, because we have configuration drift. What we, thinking about software or delivery pipeline, we have infrastructure as code, configuration as code, right? No one really builds the deployment artifacts and uploads them through FTP to a server anymore, but we automatically, run and deploy this. Just for development environments, we only, we have some build scripts or so, but then there is this dreaded README that's usually out of date, and it's only because it's only used whenever someone onboards, and then it's usually outdated. So we need to maintain that. And you just imagine you go on vacation for 2 weeks, or you just work on a different project for 1 week, or you are in a kind of on-call schedule or something else. Like, you are away from your project for a week. In that week, someone changed the Java runtime version or the database driver or something like that. And you might miss that. And then you get back and you waste hours on end because it's not running on your machine, right? And your colleagues keep saying it works on my machine, and you wonder why. And so all these kind of problems can be solved in a better way. And instead of making fun of it through comic strips and so on, we should really try to find a solution. And this is what we've been working on in the Gitpod project for the last 3-4 years. It's based on many ideas that have been developed over the years, like Docker configuration and so on, but also Cloud IDE technology, VS Code, and so on. So what we do here is we describe the development environment in code instead of in a README. That's kind of the first thing. We check that it's versioned. And then we have a webhook on your GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket repository that you can use. Whenever you push a code change, it will automatically run through the description of your developer environment and fully build a ready-to-code version of that. So it goes through all the steps we talked about, including the Maven build, including code generation things, and so on. At the end, it takes a snapshot of the result, and then that snapshot is waiting for you when you want to start coding on that particular branch or on that commit. And so with that, we have put all this into a description that is reproducible, and then it really works on every machine because it actually runs in the cloud, and you connect to these cloud development environments with your favorite interface. You can really think about that as continuous integration or CI/CD for developer environments. So you continuously build fresh ephemeral developer environments. And so that it means like they are ephemeral because you would use a fresh one for every task. So when you want to start on a feature, you go to your repository, you start a dev environment for that feature. It usually uses in the main branch. You create a local branch for that, start coding. A colleague comes by, asks you for a code review in between. And now what you can do with ephemeral developer environments is you just spin up another one on that branch of your colleague and look into that code. And when you're done, you just close the tab and Gitpod will take care of cleaning it up for you. And you can just continue to your feature work and find it as you left it before. Let me jump into eDemo because that's the best way to show how this really feels. Gitpod integrates with GitHub, obviously, but also has a native integration with GitLab, including all the self-hosted, self-managed variants, GitHub Enterprise, as well as Bitbucket. So the idea is you are working on these platforms, and whenever there is a need for starting a developer environment, you find a button. So this is obviously on the main branch, on the main side. I could switch the branch if I had others and could start a Gitpod on that branch. Or if I had pull requests, I could start a Gitpod on that pull request, and so on. What this button does is nothing else than when I click it, you can see it immediately. It just prefixes the URL with Gitpod IO hash. With that, it sends this context URL, like the letter part here. It sends that to Gitpod. So Gitpod can analyze it, look into the repository, see whether there is configuration, see whether there is a prebuild. Actually, a prebuild is kind of this CI/CD thing that I mentioned when Maven build was already done and so on. And then it takes the right configuration and creates a developer environment in the cloud. And by default, and this is the default configuration, it gives you an IDE interface that runs in your browser. But again, this is just the default, like the most convenient way for jumping in. Specifically, Java folks most of them don't use VS Code, but other IDEs, mostly I think IntelliJ IDEA is super popular. So what you can also do instead is if you go to your dashboard in Gitpod, you can change the settings and say, hey, I'm an IntelliJ user. And so when I now click this button, it will first tell me, hey, you already run a workspace on this commit. If it was another commit, Gitpod wouldn't ask because it's just a different thing. But on the same commit, it just matches you. That is intentional. But in this case, yes, we want to start a new one because we want to have an IntelliJ interface. So this starts here. It again pulls the container. It's a new workspace. And once it's done, let's see.
Maybe I can ask a question while we wait.
Yes, please.
So I was wondering if you select IntelliJ, what kind of license is connected to it?
Yeah, so
because I'm quite a power user, let's say, so I use a lot of the more advanced features, and you need the Ultimate Edition for it. So I was kind of wondering what kind of license and such is set up by default.
Yeah, so this really, like we have a strategic partnership with JetBrains on this. And so their remote development support is integrated into the Ultimate Edition. It's not part of the Community Edition. So you need to have that. And so you see now it started and it asked me to open IntelliJ. And you can see I can also go into the license, but it's just the regular Ultimate license. And the same would apply to all the other IntelliJ IDEs, whatever you use there. I hope that answers the question. If not, please ask again.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks.
Okay. So how this works is there is a headless IDE of IntelliJ running in the cloud, and it connects through a protocol to this thin client. So that's basically the JetBrains remote development support, and it's built in Gitpod to the extent that the IDE that's why I started a new workspace, because when you want to have IntelliJ, we need to put in the binaries for that, and so it starts up. Otherwise, it would take too long. You could also inject this thing, but then it would need to be uploaded, and it would add additional time. Also, in this prebuilds that I mentioned, what you can do, I haven't done that in this case, so you see it's still indexing here. What you can do is also do the indexing, like create the index and put it into the disk, and then when IntelliJ comes up, it just loads the index and it's ready to code. So this is really just, you know, a regular IntelliJ thing. You see here, we open a terminal. Let me come, I can close this browser, but here, this is the workspace I started with IntelliJ, and I can also open that in my browser in addition. And so you see now I'm connected twice to the same workspace, one with the browser, one with the IDE. And I can, for instance, connect here to the front-end terminal. And you see now, you know, they are really synced. You see on the bottom here. So this is really kind of the same shell session we are looking into from two different IDEs. And yeah, so there is no limitations in as far as I know. You know, they have really fully kind of covered everything that people love in IntelliJ and put it into this kind of remote connection thing. So you can do that. You do just your regular work, and the same goes in this VS Code. It's the full VS Code, although it runs in the browser. The third thing you could do is also use a local open VS Code. If you are a VS Code user but don't like the browser thing, you can open it up here and connect to that. I show you all these possibilities just to get across that Gitpod, or you know, this kind of thing is not yet another web IDE thing or so. It's not a Cloud9 thing, but it really is more kind of the automation of provisioning developer environments centrally, securely, and then allowing users, developers to connect to it from their favorite IDE. And so this is super important, especially when you work in bigger enterprises. You know what kind of things happen there in order to make development more secure. You know, I'm just like VDI solutions like Citrix and so on are often seen there. And here you get the security without all the compromises on developer experience. Right, so with that, you are always ready to code, and your colleagues also, like especially those who are sitting a bit on the side of the project, like QA people, product managers, project managers, and so on. They have an easy means to start a dev environment and see your software in preview mode and editing files and so on. Right. Do you have any questions regarding the demo? Should I show something going deeper? Like that was very superficial, but it's really kind of, there is basically a Linux container remotely in that, you know, you can do sudo, you can run Docker compose, whatever you want. Yeah, that's a great question. What does the specification of an environment look like? So let me open this up here. You see, this is the Gitpod YAML. So you put that into the code, just like a CI build or something else. And it looks like that, like for the main container, you specify an image or a Docker file. In this case, it's a Docker file that sits next to it. What we do here basically is we reuse something called workspace full, which is a convenient default image, and then make it so it uses Java 17. In a real world project, you would probably not go with this full thing, but you want to have more control over the tools you use, so you would start from scratch. You can do both, whatever fits your needs. Then you can specify what kind of tasks should run. So these are the tasks. I hope you can see that well. And every dash here is basically one terminal. And the terminal has different life cycles. The init lifecycle is the stuff that can run asynchronously when someone pushes a change. So that is when someone, that is what runs in prebuilds basically. And the command is what runs after that when someone starts a container. So this usually is a some development mode, a server in development mode, for instance, or something like that. Then there are other things you can configure, of course, like how ports, what ports should be exposed. So you see here there is, I'm not sure if I have started those. Yeah, there are here. These are all the ports that are running. Some of the I killed the process, so that's why they are not running. But you can provide which one should be public and expose, and what should happen when they serve, and so on. You can configure the prebuilds. You can configure what extensions you want to have, also for IntelliJ, and also whether IntelliJ should pre-build an index here. All right.
There's another question in the chat as well, Sven. How can we integrate GitHub with Gitpod?
So if you go to GitHub and you want to have this button, that's the first thing. You would just install a browser extension. So there is in the Chrome as well as Firefox Marketplace, there is an extension that adds this button. If you use GitLab, you don't have to install that because GitLab has a Gitpod button natively already. But for GitHub, you should do this. The other thing is if you want to install a webhook, you do that through a GitHub app. So you would install a GitHub app. Oops, that should be Gitpod GitHub app. Oh, why am I in all caps? So this one you would just install, and then that sits on your projects. And then when you have done that, you can. This is a bit. You can go to your dashboard and create a team and install a project from there. So here it shows this is connected with GitLab, but I can also change to GitHub. And then it lists all my orgs on that have the app installed. I have quite a lot of orgs, so that's why it's taking a bit longer. So if I wanted to install something on Eclipse, for instance, I could do that like this, and then I would create a new project within Gitpod, and there I can also see, for instance, what's going on here. This is Spring Pet Clinic, so you see what branches exist, what prebuilds ran, what the outcome was, and some settings for the project. So this is how you integrate with GitHub or generally with SDM providers.
I had a question, if you can hear me. Is it possible, conceivable at least, to run locally, sort of for offline working? Could you run the pod on some local Kubernetes or Docker running locally, and we have down and then go offline?
Yeah, that's also a good question. Yeah, we have a CLI that is open source that interprets the Gitpod YAML configuration and runs everything locally. It's even I'm not sure if that is the current state because it's still in beta, but we really want to build it so that it doesn't even need to talk to Gitpod at all. So you as a kind of opt-out, or you don't have internet or something like that, you can use that. You lose, of course, all the benefits of pre-building things, because it needs to prepare everything and you are waiting for it when you run it.
But if you're going to be traveling or something, or you say,
yeah, for those cases, that is a solution. Correct.
So what's the commercial model? So to be honest, I've never come across Gitpod before I heard about this talk. So is it a commercial organization? What's the licensing arrangement? How does it engage with enterprises?
Yeah, so it is a venture-backed startup.
Right.
The business model behind that is open core, similar to GitLab. So everything is source available. 90% of the source code is AGPL, so you can run it and for yourself, but big cloud providers cannot integrate it with their services easily. And there is a up to 10 developers, completely free license, including the enterprise features. So like as long as you are within the 10 developers, you can just use it as you wish. And with the 11s, there is a price per seat that is for the self-hosted solution. So you can install that on any Kubernetes cluster. This is the pricing model for that. What I showed you here is our SaaS offering, Gitpod.io. There's also currently seat-based. We are changing this to a usage-based pricing where individuals get credits for free on a monthly basis, and then can, if they need more or want to use it more professionally, they buy additional workspace hours, so to say.
So is it in production use by major corporations now?
Yeah, it is.
So do you have any names of public in the public domain of big users?
Yes, you can go to our website. There are also some case studies.
Mm-hmm.
You could look here at the customers, and then there will be more. So we also work with some bigger, larger banks and other large organizations, and they are usually not so easy with having this kind of name dropping here. Mm-hmm. But yeah, definitely it is. We have been around with this we started development 4 years ago. And it has been used, like we use it ourselves for 3 years now. Right. And we serve larger teams and companies, also schools and so on for 2 years. Right.
So, and with the JetBrains tie-up, I understand they're developing their own sort of next generation of editors, or it seems to be for this world of distributed IDE almost. What's it called? Fleet, is it? Their new program they have for a new IDE. Are you in the loop on that? And is that one part of your plans?
I mean, that's just a new architecture for them. A new kind of IntelliJ being built on Swing is a bit, maybe not so future proof. Like I think that's the most popular Swing app out there for years, and it is, they have built in this protocol thing already in Fleet, as far as I know. Mm-hmm. But other than that, it's just another editor that we would support, of course, if it's adopted. So for Gitpod, it's really important. Like one of our values is integrate, don't dictate. We really understand, like we are all developers for many years, and we know like the whole developer ecosystem is so big and has so many good things to offer. There is no way we want to build a solution that would be opinionated about which tools you would use here and there. So that doesn't work.
Right.
If I can jump in here, that possibly links to sort of a question I had, which is about extending this to support other editing front ends, possibly some that you might not want to support because they might be too niche or something. But is there sort of I guess sort of an open source kind of pathway where that's possible in principle, or is this very tightly tied in and in the way Gitpod is built at the moment?
I mean, we have always kept that in mind when we made architectural decisions. It's just like enabling that has not been a high priority for us. It wouldn't be too big of an effort. We are more concerned about maintenance and providing help with integrating that and so on. So currently, this is not the main thing. What we have is more generic integration points like SSH, for instance. So if you look at your workspaces here, and there is just connect via SSH, right? And I can just open a terminal, paste it in here, and then, oh, that was the wrong decision. Oh, I forgot my password, actually. Okay, Yeah, I broke that already because you upload an SSH key here, and I think I haven't done that. It's a new feature. So here I have to upload my SSH key, and then when I do that, and then I can just connect via SSH. So every tool that supports this is supported. We are also working on in the browser just terminals solution for VI users and so on, if they don't want to have the whole VS Code thing. And then of course, like there are, you can start whatever container you want, and they can expose services. So for instance, IntelliJ, they also have a solution for a web-based IDE for IntelliJ. You can just start that. This is there. We don't need to do anything there. It's just like we don't think that experience is great, so we don't promote it a lot.
Okay. Yeah, but I think that's helpful. Thanks.
All right. I think that was it.
Yeah, I'm presumably there a way that therefore to connect from your hosted IDE through to other cloud environments. So if your target cloud environment is elsewhere and you need to sort of use, say, the Azure plugin to IntelliJ hosted in Gitpod, you can somehow connect through to your target Azure cloud environment or whatever cloud it is.
Yeah, generally you can generalize that. How do you connect also to local resources or whatever? We partner with Tailscale on this. So you see here, this is my Tailscale client, which builds you nice VPNs, and so you can run a VPN. So with that, we just connect to whatever you have there in a secure way. That's a very holistic, good solution. It's also easily scriptable, so that's also nice. And in order to connect generally to things, we have, it's called variables, but it's actually also really secrets here. So you can put in whatever you have, NPM tokens or, GCP tokens and so on, and say, where should they be injected? And then they automatically and securely get injected into your workspaces every time. And so, for instance, this one, as you see, this is our kind of main repository. These things get injected. So when I start my development environment on a certain branch, it automatically sets the kube control context to my preview environment that we also spin up in parallel on every branch. So this is how you basically do it. You use variables and then also VPN.
Right. Okay. So,
sorry,
I don't want to. If you want to deploy, if you're going to deploy in a large enterprise, which typically has their own kind of security departments. I mean, you talk about using this particular VPN client. Is there generally a need to? Is that client likely to have to get, if you like, sanctioned by the local security people to connect with that client to the corporate's VPN? And I guess I'm trying to ask, is there, what sort of resistance does one find if you're trying to use this in a big corporate environment to get it initially? It sounds great from a general point of view, but in terms of initial introduction, are there some friction points there that one has to overcome?
I don't think there's a general answer. It really depends always on what has been approved, where the team is at.
Okay.
I mean, the less you have to convince or approve there, the better. And so it doesn't need to be Tailscale. Like, there are other solutions. You can also deploy Gitpod just in the same cloud environment where the resources are, and then you manage the networking there. That's another solution.
Okay. Thank you.
I have had another question come up in the chat, but it's up to you, Sven, whether you want me to ask it now or save it for later, because you might answer it as we continue.
No, happy to take it.
Cool. So the question was, can Gitpod work on enterprise internal repositories and also resolve artifacts that are internal? Oh, there we go.
I think I asked this question. I think Sven answered that, part of the previous question itself. I guess the VPN internal is going to work out in this case, right, Sven?
Yes, I mean, that's the thing, but also, of course, if you're talking about Docker repositories, there is a first-class integration with Docker, because we need that for the developer environments as well. And if you are talking about Git repositories, I already mentioned, like, if you have a self-hosted GitLab or Bitbucket server or GitHub Enterprise, you can integrate it with Gitpod as well with your self-hosted version. Yeah, you can even use Gitpod.io to integrate with your GitLab self-hosted, actually, if that is exposed to the internet. So you can also set that up.
Okay. How about the artifacts that are in JFrog artifactories, for example?
Yeah, they just need to be reachable, because Gitpod doesn't know anything about that, but your build system does. So you just need to, configure your build system with an endpoint that is reachable. So there, I think, yeah, VPN or some other network configuration would be in order.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Then let's go back to some more slides. So I hope you all understood the kind of, how nice it is to be able to automate the setup of developer environments and have it even versioned and therefore reproducible. Another thing that probably everyone has faced is when a customer comes back saying, like, yeah, I'm on this old branch, 1 year old, and there's this bug and it needs to be fixed. And then you're sitting in front of that and you don't even know how to create an environment. And also you don't want to mess with your current local setup, right? Because it just works. And if I downgrade now the database or whatever, you are up for a multi-day, hassle there. And with Gitpod, you would just go back to that old branch. And because the developer environment as code is versioned, you would also have the old description there, right? And you would just start a dev environment and it just works. The ephemerality, I want to reemphasize that. You can always start fresh. You don't need to maintain and do any kind of sync thing. So for me, I already said I have been using Gitpod for the last 3 years, at least, probably longer. And I have more or less forgotten how to, do git fetch and, change branches back and forth and things like that. I don't do that. I just start a dev environment on the branch I need, and then I code it. And then when I'm done with my change, I push it back and then I close my tab and I don't have to go back. So actually, you can also see this here. If you go to my dashboard here, you see, these are the workspaces I just prepared a bit before. I cleaned it yesterday up. So these are old workspaces. So not so many actually, that I'm showing them, but usually I have, 20 per day or so, because I do a lot of code reviews and, explore things. Even if you are looking into an upstream library, it's really nice to just spin up a dev environment and navigate code there just for exploration. So this is cool. You never drift apart with your configuration. You can work in parallel. The prebuild thing, just to explain how it works. And actually, if you don't have this prebuild, you cannot do the ephemerality, because you would need to invest all the kind of time into every development environment, right? You need to wait for Maven build to complete, which can take a few minutes. Like this example with concrete numbers is actually the VS Code repository, the open source repository we measured once. But you know, a build that takes 50 minutes is not super unusual. So I think it's very common. So what you need is a super fast startup time. And then what you want is kind of everything that can be done asynchronously before you even open your developer environment. That can be started when a commit got pushed, so remotely. And that's what prebuilds do, right? They run through everything that can be prepared, take a snapshot, and when you come by, they spin up a new dev environment as fast as possible for you. Moving these developer environments into configuration and into the cloud makes things also more secure, because you have, you know, this data storage is centralized. You don't have clones and copies of your entire source code and history on laptops around the world, in coffee shops and wherever people work nowadays. And you also don't run them in this context anymore. You know, the code gets executed within the containers with clear kind of, you know, definition of what the network can do and what not, and so on. And all the connections to this environment, of course, is secured. So this is an excellent replacement for VDI solutions. You know, much better developer experience. So also, you know, developers love it much more. And then it's even easier, much cheaper, because these Citrix things they need VMs running all the time, really resource intensive. And then the license is also not really cheap. So the contextual bit, I didn't really show that, but when you start, for instance, on an issue on GitHub, Gitpod understands how you want to probably fix it. So it will create a local branch for you already in that dev environment. When you start a Gitpod on a code review, like on a pull request, it checks out the branch, but also it opens up in VS Code the code review view. So you see all the comments. You can also comment inside the files in the IDE and so on. And of course, you can also open on files and branches and commits, and you get what, you know, it's basically inflating, give me the kind of the live version of this view on GitHub, more or less. Since the default IDE, the VS Code one, runs in the browser, you can access it from any device. But more importantly, I think, is that people who are not core developers and are not working on your project every day have a chance to open a dev environment and, you know, be deeper involved in your project easily. Like, there's not this big hurdle that intimidates people on, you know, should I start coding here or contributing or not? Because this hurdle is gone away. Doing a small fix is super easy, even if the project is complex. And then when you move these development environments to the cloud, they are centralized there. So you can, of course, much easier share with your colleagues, look into the same sessions. And even cooler with Gitpod, you can snapshot a dev environment. And then you get a URL. And then you can share that URL. And people who click on that URL, they each get their own exact copy of that workspace. So this is great for building examples, but also reproducibles in issues and things like that. One of the biggest concerns I hear often when I talk about this is like, yeah, but I have my, you know, my very special setup, and I don't think we'll find consensus with my teams, and I even don't want to work on that consensus thing. So Gitpod covers this as well. So what you do is, on the basis, you make sure the project has a great configuration with the Gitpod YAML and the Docker file and so on, right? So for everyone, the experience is great. And then on top, what you can do is shadow this or enhance this with user level configuration. You can have additional extensions that are automatically installed in all your IDEs, like specifically themes or key bindings make a lot of sense, right? People who love Vim or key bindings, you probably don't want to put that on the project level for everyone. Then there's also, Gitpod supports .file repository. So in your user setting, you can point to a repository that is your .file repository. Like .file is basically a repository that gets checked out in your home directory and initialized on startup. So there you can put in aliases for the shell, specific shell things, commands, and so on, configuration like that. And so with that, you get best of both, like, and it's still automated and configured, right? Even the user configuration is also reproducible. You always get it on top of your developer environments. All right, with that, I am at the end of this presentation. And if you have another question, I'm open to take some. And if not, I encourage you to check out the project. I've left a few links here, the website, obviously, the project on GitHub. We have a big community, lots of people very active there on Discord. And then, of course, feel free to follow our Twitter account to get any updates or news.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sven. Has anybody got any questions? I think that's a record. We've never got to the end of a talk without questions, but obviously you've been answering them as we've gone through. So like Tom's just said, you know, interactive session always means, or can mean, you don't get questions at the end because you've answered them already. So fantastic. Yeah,
thank you. It was a lot of fun. And also, if you want to reach out to me because you feel like you want to, discuss it within your team or so, I'm happy to join, any kind of brown bag sessions or so, show it to your team. Reach out to Sven at Gitpod.io, and I'd be happy to do that.
Fantastic. I will just put the link in the chat as well for our YouTube channel, so you'd be able to get the video from there. You'll also, I will do a social media post once the recording's available as well, and I'll put that in the social media post. But if you get there before I do, you can find it out on our YouTube channel.
Perfect.
Fantastic. Well, all that is left for me to say then is thank you so much, Sven, for sharing what you know and answering our questions along the way, and that really fantastic, interesting talk. Thank you, everybody, for coming and joining us this afternoon. Thanks, Tom, for thanking me for hosting. It's fine. I love it. I love hosting these events because I always learn something, which is amazing. And I really look forward to seeing you all at the next LJC event. And have a great rest of your day and a great weekend. Take care. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Abby. Thank everyone. Bye-bye.